A cowboy risked everything for an elderly Apache woman, and the reward was incredible. His horse, a strong chestnut named Duke, moved steadily along the worn trail that wound through the plains of the Southwest. Jack's face was tanned and lined from years of working under the open sky, and his eyes carried the quiet strength of someone who had faced danger many times but still moved forward with calm determination. The cattle drive he had been overseeing for the past few weeks was finally nearing its end, but the road ahead was long and lonely. Jack liked it that way. Solitude gave him time to think, and the open plains always reminded him that life was bigger than any one problem. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, Jack noticed something unusual near the edge of a dry creek. At first he thought it might be an animal, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a woman, an elderly woman struggling against the heat and the uneven terrain. She moved slowly, carefully placing each step, her worn moccasins barely gripping the dusty ground. Her small bundle of belongings was heavy, and she leaned on a simple wooden staff as she made her way across the creek bed. Jack slowed Duke to a walk and watched for a moment. There was something about her presence that made him pause. Perhaps it was the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite her obvious struggle. Or maybe it was the feeling of unfamiliarity. She was clearly from the Apache tribe, and he knew that meeting strangers in this land could sometimes be dangerous. Jack had heard stories of mistrust between settlers and Native Americans, and he knew he had to approach carefully. "Ma'am," Jack called out softly, tipping his hat. "Do you need some help?" The woman's dark eyes flicked up toward him, cautious but not unkind. She said nothing at first, simply holding her staff tighter and shifting the bundle on her back. Jack dismounted and walked closer, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," he said gently. "I'm just a cowboy passing through. I can help you across if you like." The woman studied him for a long moment. Her wrinkled face was marked with years of life, struggle, and wisdom. Finally, she nodded slightly, a silent acceptance. Jack stepped forward and offered his hand. She grasped it firmly, and together they moved toward the shallow creek. As they crossed, Jack noticed the bundle she carried. It was small but clearly precious. He didn't pry, but he respected that whatever it was, it mattered deeply to her. When they reached the other side, she gave him a small, appreciative nod. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice calm and steady despite the evident fatigue in her body. "You're welcome," Jack replied. "Where are you headed? Maybe I can help you get there faster." The woman hesitated, her eyes scanning the horizon as if measuring the distance and danger. "I am going to my village," she said finally. "I must deliver this and see my family." Jack nodded. "I can help you get there. The trail can be rough and lonely, and it's easy to get hurt out here." She looked at him for a long moment, weighing his words. Finally, with a quiet determination, she said, "If you can walk with me, I would be grateful." Jack felt a sense of purpose stir inside him. He was used to helping people in need, but something about this journey felt different, more important, more personal. He swung his saddlebag over his shoulder and began walking beside her, guiding Duke along the edge of the creek. As they traveled, Jack learned a little about the woman. Her name was Grandmother Nita, and though her body was small and frail, her spirit was strong. She spoke of her family, scattered across the plains, and of the traditions she held dear. Jack listened carefully, respecting her stories and asking questions only when she seemed willing to answer. The path ahead was not easy. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the ground was dry and cracked. Jack's boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step, and Duke occasionally nickered softly, sensing the tension in the air. But Jack felt a sense of calm in helping Nita. He realized that life was often about small acts of courage, offering a helping hand, standing by someone when the road is hard, and walking together even when the future is uncertain. As the afternoon wore on, they encountered their first real challenge. The trail narrowed along a rocky hillside, and loose stones made footing treacherous. Jack went ahead, testing each step before Nita followed. He reached out a hand to steady her when a rock shifted under her moccasin, and she caught it with a quiet, grateful smile. "You're very kind," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement despite the fatigue. "Not many would stop to help a stranger." Jack shrugged. "I've had people help me when I needed it. I figure it's only fair to pass it on." They continued in companionable silence, broken only by the soft sound of Duke's hooves and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Jack noticed the way Nita's eyes scanned the horizon constantly, alert and watchful. He realized that her life had been one of vigilance and resilience, shaped by experiences he could only imagine. As evening approached, the sky turned shades of pink and purple, and Jack knew they needed to find a safe place to rest. He spotted a small clearing near the base of a hill, where a few scraggly bushes could provide some shelter. They set up a simple camp, and Jack gathered firewood while Nita carefully arranged her bundle nearby. Sitting by the small fire, they shared a modest meal, dried meat, some bread and water from Jack's canteen. Nita spoke quietly about the lands they passed, pointing out plants and animals she recognized. Jack listened, fascinated by her knowledge and the way she connected with the land. "You know these plains better than anyone I've ever met," he said, genuinely impressed. Nita smiled faintly. "The land has been my home for many years. It teaches you if you are willing to listen." The night grew colder, and Jack offered Nita one of his blankets. She accepted, tucking it around her shoulders with a quiet nod. As they settled in, Jack thought about the journey ahead. The path to her village would be long and difficult, but he was determined to stay by her side. Before closing his eyes, he looked at her and said, "We'll get there, I promise. You're not alone on this road." Nita's eyes softened, and she gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a bond formed through trust, courage, and the simple act of helping another person in need. Jack lay back, staring at the stars slowly appearing in the vast night sky. He thought about how life had a way of presenting opportunities to do the right thing, sometimes when you least expected it. Helping Nita was more than a good deed. It was a test of character, a chance to step into something bigger than himself. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Jack felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready. Together, he and grandmother Nita would face whatever the plains had to offer, and in doing so, discover the strength, courage, and humanity that lay within them both. And so, under the endless stars and the quiet watch of the desert, their journey truly began, a journey that would test them, transform them, and ultimately lead them to a reward neither could have imagined. The next morning, Jack woke to the soft pink light of dawn spilling across the plains. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of sage and earth. Duke, his loyal horse, was already nibbling on some sparse grass, and grandmother Nita was quietly preparing for the day. Her movements were deliberate and careful, each step measured by years of experience. Despite her age, she had a strength in her posture and a sharpness in her eyes that reminded Jack that she was not an ordinary traveler. They set out early, knowing that the sun would grow hot and harsh by midday. The trail ahead was not easy. The terrain was uneven, with rocky paths, dry creek beds, and patches of thorny bushes. Jack led the way, carefully choosing his steps and offering his hand when the ground became too tricky. Nita followed, steady but cautious, leaning on her staff when necessary. As they walked, Jack decided to ask about the bundle she carried. "Grandmother Nita," he began gently, "if you don't mind me asking, what's in the bundle? It seems very important." She paused, her eyes scanning the horizon as if measuring the distance they still had to cover. Then slowly she spoke. "It is a small treasure of my family," she said, her voice quiet but firm. It was taken from us long ago. I have traveled many miles to recover it and return it to those who should have it." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I see. I can help you get it back safely," he said. "It won't be easy, but I'll stay by your side." Nita looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. "You have a brave heart, Cowboy," she said finally. "Many would see danger and turn away. But you are willing to walk this path with me." The rest of the morning passed in a quiet rhythm. Jack and Nita walked side by side, sharing small stories of their pasts. Nita spoke of her childhood, growing up in the Apache traditions, learning about the land, and the importance of family and honor. Jack shared tales of life as a cowboy, long days on the trail, the responsibility of caring for cattle, and the lessons he had learned from years of hard work. By midday, the sun had climbed high in the sky, making the air heavy and hot. They paused under a lone mesquite tree to rest. Jack offered Nita some water from his canteen, and she accepted with a grateful nod. "You have been kind to me," she said softly. "Most men would not have stopped to help a woman like me, especially one who is alone." Jack shrugged. "I believe in helping people when they need it. It's not always about courage or bravery, it's just about doing what's right." Nita smiled faintly. "You have a strong spirit, Jack Tanner. I can see that. It will serve you well on this journey." After resting for a while, they continued their trek. The path became more challenging as they approached a narrow canyon. Loose rocks and steep slopes made each step treacherous. Jack went ahead, testing each footing carefully. When Nita followed, he reached out his hand to steady her whenever the ground shifted beneath her feet. Suddenly, a harsh sound broke the quiet, the cawing of a raven, followed by a rustle in the bushes. Jack tensed, his eyes scanning the area. Outlaws sometimes traveled these paths, taking advantage of lonely travelers. He moved closer to Nita, his hand resting near the holster at his side, though he hoped he would not need it. From the brush, 3 men emerged. Their clothing was ragged, their faces marked with the hard life of the trail. They carried simple weapons, but their intent was clear. "Well, what do we have here?" one of them sneered. "Looks like a cowboy and an old woman all alone. Could be easy pickings." Jack stepped in front of Nita, placing himself between her and the men. "We don't want any trouble," he said calmly. "Leave us be and no one gets hurt." The men laughed, a low, cruel sound. "That's the problem with cowboys," one of them said. "Always thinking they can protect everyone." Jack's eyes narrowed. He knew that words alone would not stop them, but he also knew that panicking would only put Nita in more danger. Using his years of experience, he positioned Duke so that the horse stood between him and the outlaws, making it harder for them to approach. A tense moment passed. Then Jack drew his revolver slowly, making sure to keep his movement steady. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "But I will protect her. Back off or you'll regret it." The men hesitated, sizing him up. They could see the determination in his eyes and the firm grip on his weapon. After a long moment, they spat on the ground and muttered curses, finally retreating into the brush. Nita exhaled, a mix of relief and admiration in her eyes. "You saved me," she said softly. Jack lowered his revolver and nodded. "I couldn't let them take you, not after we've come this far." The incident left both of them shaken, but it also strengthened their bond. They continued on, more aware of the dangers of the trail, but also more determined. The path led them through dry washes and rocky outcrops, and Jack noticed the way Nita moved with a quiet confidence, despite the challenges. She was not just an old woman, she was a survivor, shaped by years of hardship and wisdom. As afternoon turned to evening, they found a small clearing near a spring. Water was precious in this part of the plains, and Jack was glad to find a safe place to rest. Nita knelt by the spring, washing her hands and face, while Jack set up a small campfire. Over their simple meal of dried meat, bread, and water, Nita shared more of her story. She spoke of the sacred artifact she carried, explaining its importance to her family and tribe. Jack listened, fascinated by her dedication and the depth of her connection to her heritage. "You have traveled far," Jack said. "Why is this so important to you?" Nita's eyes glistened. "It is not just an object," she said quietly. "It carries the memories and blessings of my ancestors. Returning it is my duty. Without it, my family's history is incomplete." Jack felt a deep respect for her resolve. He realized that this journey was about more than just reaching a destination. It was about honor, courage, and preserving something larger than themselves. Night fell, and the plains were quiet except for the gentle rustle of wind through the grasses and the occasional cry of an owl. Jack and Nita settled near the fire, wrapping themselves in blankets against the cold. Jack felt a sense of responsibility and pride. He was no longer just a cowboy on a routine drive. He was a protector, a companion, and a witness to something extraordinary. Before closing his eyes, he looked at Nita and said, "We'll face whatever comes tomorrow together. I promise." Nita nodded, her expression calm but filled with gratitude. "I am glad you are here, Jack Tanner," she said. "The road is long, but with courage and trust, we can overcome it." Jack lay back and gazed at the star-filled sky. The journey was only beginning, and he knew the coming days would test them both. But he also knew that this adventure would change him, just as it would honor Nita and her family. Together they would face danger, overcome challenges, and discover the strength that comes from loyalty, trust, and doing what is right. And so, with the stars watching over them and the desert wind whispering through the plains, Jack Tanner and grandmother Nita prepared for the journey ahead. A journey that would test their courage, deepen their bond, and ultimately lead to a reward far greater than either of them had imagined. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the vast plains, painting the horizon in soft shades of orange and pink. Jack Tanner stretched his stiff muscles and rubbed his eyes, feeling the soreness from the previous day's long journey. Duke nickered softly, sensing the quiet excitement of the new day. Grandmother Nita was already awake, carefully packing her small bundle. Her movements were slow but deliberate, and Jack watched her with admiration. Despite her age, she carried herself with quiet strength, and every step she took seemed measured by years of wisdom and experience. "Ready for today?" Jack asked, adjusting the straps on his saddlebag. Nita nodded. "The path ahead is not easy," she said, "but with courage and care, we will reach what we seek." Jack smiled, feeling a mixture of determination and curiosity. He had grown more than he expected from simply helping a woman cross the plains. He was learning patience, humility, and a deeper understanding of life's challenges. He felt honored to be part of Nita's journey. The trail led them into a narrow canyon, where the walls rose high on either side, casting shadows that danced with the morning light. Loose stones and sharp rocks made footing difficult, and Jack carefully guided Nita along the safest path. Duke moved steadily, trusting Jack's judgment and sensing the quiet tension in the air. As they progressed, Nita began to teach Jack small lessons about survival in the wilderness. She pointed out plants with medicinal properties, showing him which roots could soothe pain or aid digestion. She explained how to read the land, how the direction of the wind could indicate approaching storms, how the tracks of animals could guide them to water, and how the cries of birds often warned of danger. Jack listened intently, realizing how little he truly knew about the land he had spent so many years traveling. "You have lived a remarkable life, Nita," he said. "You see and understand things I never even notice." She smiled faintly. "The land teaches those who are willing to pay attention. It is not just about surviving, it is about living with respect and awareness." Their lessons were interrupted when a sudden rustling in the bushes alerted Jack. He immediately positioned himself between Nita and the source of the sound, his hand hovering near his revolver. Out of the brush emerged a lone traveler, a man whose clothes were tattered and whose eyes were wary. "Are you hurt?" Jack asked cautiously. "Do you need help?" The man hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I'm fine," he said, "just traveling through." Nita studied him silently, her sharp eyes noting every detail. "The road is dangerous," she said quietly. "One must always be prepared." Jack nodded. "That's true. There are outlaws, wild animals, and harsh weather, but together we can face it." The traveler nodded and moved on, disappearing down the narrow canyon path. Jack exhaled, feeling the tension slowly leave his body. "Every step of this journey reminds me how unpredictable life can be," he said to Nita. She nodded in agreement. "That is why courage is so important, not the absence of fear, but the strength to continue despite it." As they continued, Jack reflected on the moral lessons he had learned from Nita. Earlier in the day, he had been offered a chance to take a short detour that could have led him to a small group of settlers who needed help with their cattle. It was a tempting opportunity. He could have earned money and supplies, but it would have meant leaving Nita behind. Without hesitation, he chose to stay with her, knowing that the right path was not always the easiest or the most profitable. Nita noticed his thoughtful expression and spoke softly. "Your heart guides you, Jack Tanner. That is what makes you strong. Courage and honor are not measured by wealth or power, but by the choices we make when it matters most." Jack felt a deep respect for her wisdom. He realized that this journey was teaching him more than just survival. It was teaching him about values, integrity, and the kind of man he wanted to be. By mid-afternoon, the canyon opened into a wide valley. The sun beat down fiercely, making the air shimmer with heat. They paused near a small stream, grateful for the cool water and shade. Nita knelt by the water, washing her hands and face, while Jack gave Duke a drink from his canteen. "You have endured much, Nita," Jack said gently. "Do you ever feel afraid?" She looked up, her dark eyes steady. "Fear is a part of life," she said. "It reminds us that we are alive, but it must not control us. We act with courage even when fear is present." Jack admired her calmness. He had faced fear many times in his life, storms on the plains, stampeding cattle and bandits, but he had never seen someone confront it with such quiet strength and clarity. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant, urgent sound, the roar of water rushing through a dry creek bed. Jack and Nita quickly realized that a sudden flash flood had begun upstream, and the water was moving fast. The narrow valley could become dangerous if they did not act quickly. Jack grabbed Nita's hand. "We need to move to higher ground," he shouted over the roar. Together, they raced up a rocky incline, Duke leaping with strength and precision. Jack helped Nita navigate the uneven terrain, guiding her carefully over sharp rocks and loose stones. The floodwaters crashed below them, carrying debris and dust. It was a dangerous moment, and Jack felt his heart pound, but he refused to show fear. Nita trusted him completely, and he could not let her down. Finally, they reached a safe ledge overlooking the valley. Both were breathless but unharmed. Nita looked at Jack with gratitude in her eyes. "You saved us," she said softly. Jack smiled, feeling relief wash over him. "We saved each other," he said. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance." The incident reminded Jack that the journey was not just about physical challenges. It was also about trust, teamwork, and relying on one another. Nita had taught him lessons of patience, observation, and respect for the land. He, in turn, had provided strength, protection, and support when it was most needed. As the sun began to set, they found a sheltered grove where they could rest for the night. Jack built a small fire while Nita arranged her bundle nearby. They shared a simple meal of dried meat, bread, and water. Jack noticed that Nita's eyes, though tired, still shone with determination. "You have grown stronger since we began this journey," she said quietly. "Not just in body, but in heart and spirit. You have learned patience, courage, and wisdom." Jack felt a warmth in his chest at her words. He had come to help her, but he realized that he was learning from her in ways he had never expected. The journey was changing him, shaping him into a better man, someone more thoughtful, more compassionate, and more aware of the world around him. Night fell, and the stars filled the sky with their soft, twinkling light. Jack and Nita lay near the fire, wrapped in blankets against the cool desert air. The silence of the night was comforting, broken only by the occasional cry of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the wind. Jack looked at Nita, who was quietly gazing at the stars. "Tomorrow will be another challenge," he said softly. She nodded. "Yes, but with courage, trust, and careful steps, we will continue. The path may be difficult, but it leads to what is important." Jack felt a deep sense of connection and purpose. This journey was no longer just about helping someone in need. It was about growth, understanding, and the strength that comes from facing challenges together. He knew that the days ahead would test them further, but he also knew that they could overcome anything if they relied on courage, wisdom, and trust. As he drifted to sleep under the vast desert sky, Jack Tanner felt a quiet confidence. He and grandmother Nita were no longer just companions on a journey. They were partners in a quest for something far greater than themselves. They would face dangers, overcome obstacles, and learn lessons that would stay with them for a lifetime. And with each step, they were moving closer to the reward that awaited, not just in material terms, but in friendship, respect, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The morning sun rose over the rugged valley with a golden glow, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. Jack Tanner and grandmother Nita packed their small camp and prepared to continue their journey. The night had been quiet, but both of them knew that the path ahead would be even more challenging. Today, they would reach the canyon where Nita's sacred artifact had been hidden, and the dangers they might face could test both their courage and their wits. Jack adjusted his saddlebag and gave Duke a reassuring pat. "Ready for the next leg of our journey?" he asked. Nita nodded. "Yes, the path is treacherous, but we must be careful and stay strong. The artifact must be returned to its rightful place." As they approached the entrance of the canyon, the landscape became sharply uneven. Jagged cliffs rose on both sides, and loose stones covered the narrow trail. Jack went ahead, carefully testing each step and helping Nita navigate the tricky terrain. She moved slowly but steadily, leaning on her staff when necessary, her determination evident in every step. "This place is dangerous," Jack said, his voice low. "One misstep and we could fall." Nita looked at him calmly. "I have walked many paths in my life," she said. "I trust you to guide me safely. Courage and caution must walk together." The deeper they went into the canyon, the more isolated it became. The walls of rock created a natural barrier, blocking the view of the outside world. Jack felt a sense of tension in the air, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Every sound, the crunch of rocks underfoot, the whisper of wind through narrow crevices, echoed loudly, reminding them that danger could be anywhere. After several hours of careful walking, they finally reached a small plateau overlooking a deep, shadowed part of the canyon. Jack noticed movement near a cluster of rocks below. A man was there, guarding what looked like a small wooden chest. He was clearly the one who had taken the artifact years ago, and now he seemed determined to keep it from anyone who came for it. Jack crouched behind a rock and whispered to Nita, "We'll need to be smart. We can't just rush in. It's too risky." Nita nodded. "I understand, but we must retrieve what belongs to my family. There is no other way." Together they devised a careful plan. Jack would distract the man while Nita retrieved the artifact. The risk was high, but both knew it was necessary. Jack drew his revolver not to harm, but to make a show of strength if needed. He stepped out from behind the rock, calling loudly, "Hey there. You shouldn't be keeping what doesn't belong to you." The man turned, startled, and Jack used the moment to gauge the terrain. He noticed loose rocks nearby that could create noise or distractions if moved carefully. Meanwhile, Nita silently crept toward the wooden chest, her small frame allowing her to move quietly and unnoticed. Jack threw a small rock toward a nearby boulder, creating a loud crash. The man's attention snapped to the sound, and Nita seized the opportunity. She opened the chest and lifted the artifact carefully. It was a small bundle wrapped in worn cloth, but the significance of it radiated from her. She held it close, feeling the weight of her ancestors and the history it carried. Suddenly, the man realized what was happening and lunged toward her. Jack stepped forward, positioning himself between Nita and the man, his voice firm and commanding. "Stay back! Leave her be!" The man hesitated, sizing up Jack and realizing he was not dealing with someone weak. After a tense moment, he muttered a curse and retreated, disappearing into the canyon. Jack exhaled sharply, relief flooding him. Nita held the artifact close to her chest, her eyes shining with gratitude and triumph. "You did it," Jack said softly. "We did it. It's safe now." Nita looked at him with deep appreciation. "You were brave, Jack Tanner. Without your courage, I could not have retrieved it. This is more than an object. It is the legacy of my family, and you helped me protect it." The journey back was slow, but filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Jack helped Nita navigate the dangerous canyon paths, guiding her carefully over the uneven rocks. Both of them felt a mix of exhaustion and relief, knowing that the hardest part of their journey had been completed. As they emerged from the canyon and returned to the wider plains, Nita shared stories about the artifact, its significance, the rituals it was part of, and the respect it commanded within her community. Jack listened, fascinated by the depth of tradition and the strength it gave her. "You know, Jack," Nita said quietly as they rested by a small stream, "true courage is not only in facing danger, it is in standing for what is right, even when the world doubts you. Today you showed that courage." Jack smiled, feeling a warmth he had not felt in years. "I only did what I felt was right," he said. "But I have to admit, seeing you hold that artifact, it feels like we accomplished something truly important." Nita nodded. "We have. And there is more. The village awaits us, and they will honor this day. They will see that our efforts were not in vain." As evening approached, the two found a safe place to rest for the night. They built a small fire, and the warmth and glow brought a sense of peace after the day's challenges. Jack offered Nita some food and water, and she accepted with a grateful smile. Sitting by the fire, Nita spoke about the importance of community and gratitude. "The village will welcome you, Jack Tanner, not because of wealth or fame, but because you acted with integrity and courage. You helped protect what is sacred. That is a reward greater than gold." Jack felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The journey had been dangerous, exhausting, and full of uncertainty, but he realized that the real reward was not just the artifact itself. It was the bond he had formed with Nita, the lessons he had learned about courage and honor, and the knowledge that he had done the right thing. Night fell, and the stars spread across the sky in brilliant patterns. Jack and Nita lay near the fire, wrapped in blankets to ward off the chill. The quiet of the plains was comforting, filled with the soft whispers of wind and distant calls of nocturnal animals. Jack looked at Nita, who was gazing at the sky. "Tomorrow we reach your village," he said softly. "I can't imagine how they will react." Nita smiled faintly. "They will see what has been done. They will honor the courage, not just mine, but yours as well. And in that, we will all be rewarded, not with wealth, but with respect, gratitude, and the continuation of our traditions." Jack felt a swell of pride and humility. He realized that this journey had changed him. He was no longer just a cowboy traveling the plains. He was a protector, a friend, and someone who had faced real danger for a purpose larger than himself. He understood now that the greatest rewards were not material, but the lessons learned, the trust earned, and the lives touched along the way. As he drifted to sleep under the wide, starry sky, Jack Tanner felt a quiet strength within him. He knew that the journey to the village would bring its own challenges, but he also knew that they were ready. Together, He and grandmother Nita had faced danger, shown courage, and achieved something meaningful. And the reward they would soon receive, respect, gratitude, and the bonds of trust, was far greater than either of them had imagined. The night passed peacefully, filled with the gentle crackle of the fire and the quiet rhythm of the plains. Jack lay awake for a while, thinking of the journey so far and the lessons learned. He thought of the courage it took to stand for what is right, the strength found in trust, and the power of loyalty. These were the things that would stay with him long after the journey ended. And so, as dawn approached, Jack Tanner and grandmother Nita prepared for the final stage of their journey. The village was near, and with it, the promise of gratitude, honor, and recognition for the courage and determination they had shown. The artifact was safe, the danger had been overcome, and their journey, though still not complete, had proven that true reward comes not from riches, but from integrity, bravery, and the bonds formed in the face of adversity. The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting golden light across the plains. Jack Tanner and grandmother Nita stood at the edge of the last stretch of trail, looking down toward the village nestled in a small valley surrounded by hills. After days of traveling through rough terrain, avoiding dangers and overcoming obstacles, they had finally reached the place Nita had been seeking for so long. The sight of the village filled both of them with a mixture of anticipation and relief. Jack helped Nita adjust her bundle, making sure it was secure and comfortable. "This is it," he said softly. "We're almost there." Nita's eyes shone with gratitude. "Yes, Jack, the journey is almost complete, and it has been made easier because of your courage and loyalty." As they descended the final path toward the village, people began to notice them. Villagers paused from their daily work, looking with curiosity and cautious interest. Some whispered among themselves, surprised to see an elderly woman traveling with a cowboy. Jack walked beside Nita, steady and respectful, giving her the space to move with dignity. When they finally reached the center of the village, Nita's family and fellow villagers had gathered. Their faces reflected concern, curiosity, and finally recognition as they saw Nita safely holding the small, sacred bundle. She was greeted with warm embraces, smiles, and words of gratitude. Jack stayed respectfully to the side, knowing that this moment belonged to Nita and her community. One of the elders, a man with silver hair and a wise, lined face, stepped forward. "Nita," he said warmly, "you have returned safely and you bring back what was lost. We are grateful not only for your courage but for the bravery of the man who helped you on this journey." He turned to Jack. "Jack Tanner, your heart is strong and your actions have honored us. You have shown courage, loyalty, and respect. For that, we thank you." Jack felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of pride that was not about money or recognition, but about being acknowledged for doing the right thing. He nodded humbly. "I only did what I could. Nita taught me more than I could have imagined about life, courage, and respect." The villagers cheered softly, a mix of relief and admiration. Nita held the sacred bundle high, symbolizing the restoration of her family's legacy. Tears of joy appeared in her eyes as she turned to Jack. "We could not have done this without you," she said softly. "You risked yourself for something that was not yours simply because it was right. That is a rare gift." Jack smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "It was an honor to help," he said, "and I have learned so much from you and your people." The village elders invited Jack to join them in a small ceremony to celebrate the return of the sacred artifact. It was a simple yet meaningful event, filled with songs, blessings, and words of gratitude. Jack observed quietly, understanding that this was more than a celebration. It was a recognition of courage, honor, and the power of doing what is right, even when it is difficult. After the ceremony, one of the elders approached Jack with an unexpected gift, a small deed for a piece of land near the village. "This land is ours, but we offer it to you as a token of respect," the elder said. You help protect what is sacred, and in doing so, you have become part of our story. This land will always welcome you." Jack was taken aback. He had never expected anything in return. His reward had always been the knowledge that he had done the right thing. But the gift touched him deeply, representing not just land but respect, trust, and belonging. He accepted it humbly, promising to honor the gift and the people who had given it to him. Over the next few days, Jack stayed in the village, helping with small tasks and learning more about the community. He assisted with cattle and helped repair fences, sharing his knowledge as a cowboy. At the same time, he learned more from the villagers, their traditions, stories, and connection to the land. Every day strengthened the bond he had formed with Nita and her people. Nita's family welcomed Jack with warmth, and he became a respected guest and friend. They shared meals, stories, and laughter, and Jack felt a sense of belonging he had not experienced before. He realized that this journey had given him more than adventure or material reward. It had given him friendship, trust, and a deeper understanding of life. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Jack and Nita sat on a small rise overlooking the village. The sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and purple, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. "Jack," Nita said softly, "you have done more than help me recover a family treasure. You have shown what it means to have courage, honor, and a kind heart. You have proven that doing what is right is always worth the risk." Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I've learned so much from you, Nita," he said. "This journey changed me in ways I never expected. I see now that true courage is about more than facing danger. It's about standing for what is right, protecting others, and staying true to your values." Nita nodded. "Yes. And your reward is not just land or recognition or thanks. It is the knowledge that you have done what matters. That is a gift no one can take away." The days that followed were filled with quiet fulfillment. Jack helped in small ways around the village, earning the respect of the people not only as a cowboy, but as someone who had proven his loyalty and integrity. He visited Nita's family often, learning more about their traditions, sharing stories, and forging connections that would last a lifetime. The bond between Jack and Nita grew stronger with each passing day. She taught him more about the Apache way of life, the importance of family, and the value of respecting the land. Jack, in turn, shared his knowledge of the plains, survival skills, and the experience of years on the trail. They had become partners in a journey that had begun with simple kindness and had grown into a story of courage, trust, and mutual respect. One quiet evening, Jack stood on the small piece of land the villagers had gifted him. The plain stretched out before him, endless and open, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. Duke nickered softly as Jack patted him, feeling a deep connection to the land, the village, and the life he had chosen to embrace. He thought back to the moment he had first met Nita, when she struggled across the dry creek. He remembered the risks, the dangers, and the challenges they had faced together. And now, standing there, he realized that every step of the journey had been worth it. The real reward was not the land or the recognition or even the artifact itself. The reward was the journey, the lessons learned, the friendships forged, and the courage discovered within himself. Nita approached, holding a small bundle of herbs and flowers. She placed it gently on the ground beside Jack. "This is for you," she said softly, "a reminder that courage, loyalty, and honor are always remembered and celebrated." Jack smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "Thank you, Nita," he said. "This journey has changed me forever. I will never forget it, or you." As the night settled over the village, Jack and Nita looked up at the sky filled with stars. The quiet of the plains, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the distant call of an owl created a sense of peace and completeness. The journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness had ended with a reward far greater than either of them had expected. It was a reward of respect, trust, friendship, and the enduring knowledge that doing what is right will always bring its own blessings. Jack Tanner had risked everything for an elderly Apache woman, and in doing so, he had discovered something more valuable than wealth or fame. He had discovered courage, honor, and the power of the human spirit. And as he stood there, surrounded by friends, family, and the vast, beautiful plains, he knew that this journey would stay with him forever. A story of bravery, compassion, and the incredible rewards that come from walking the path of integrity. With a quiet smile, Jack looked out over the land, Duke by his side, and felt a sense of fulfillment and peace that only comes from truly doing what is right. And in that moment, he understood that the journey itself, the risks, the struggles, and the triumphs, was the greatest reward of all.